Welcome to Life Made Easier podcast with your host, Leslie Paziak, where mental and emotional well-being are found in healing forward by beginning within, where understanding who you are and the divine significance of why you are truly here, unlocking the powerful connection to the sacred sources within to begin intentionally living the life you are here to live and create, living from the inside out.
We have some similar life experiences in this, and in the way that we approached healing, and I think that the way that we both approached it really is the key to how we were able to heal it. And it's not that we ignored it, it's not that we blamed anybody. We actually healed it within ourselves first. That's why I think that this podcast edition is going to be so powerful for so many, because it's going to set you free. It's going to set people free of those burdens. It's not going to wipe it from your mind, but it's going to give you healing, strength, and wisdom. And my guest today is Sharon Rolfe. And Sharon is a behavioral scientist, and she's a Spark coach. And she has, I think, that one of the most touching stories to share, that during this podcast, I just want her to just flow. And if anybody has any questions, we will address that in the end. But thank you, Sharon, so much. I know that you're such a beautiful soul, and the things you've shared with me, I think this was back in January, February, but this is now May, that we're finally able to get together and talk about this. But I think there's timing for everything, and this is a good time for this. How are you doing today?
Quite well. I've been connecting with a couple people already that have touched my heart, and I've been waiting for a breakthrough. And this is part of where we need to be.
Right. I think it's not only where we ourselves need to be, but I think it's where we as a humanity, a world. I'm not talking about people just in the United States. I'm not talking about anything. I'm saying there's one race to me, the human race, and I think that this podcast is really going to help many of them. I think there's a lot of issues right now with pornography, and we need to look at some of this stuff and really come to terms with it. So go ahead, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, it kind of started coming to light when I was getting ready to leave Washington State for a job transfer, and close by somebody invited me to a lady's house. There was a bunch of people that had been invited, and I hadn't been there before, but there was somebody there that was giving a prophetic word to many people, and I was one of the last ones that she talked to. And I believe she asked me what was my earliest memory or youngest memory. And what came to mind, I was kind of surprised, because I had kind of had a couple flashes of me at some point being scared stiff. It's kind of like when you blow in a baby's face and it goes real stiff. Well, that's what I had sensed 2 or 3 times, and I don't know where it came from, but she validated that had happened, and that I was in my crib is where I felt it happened. And I don't know anything more than that, other than my dad was standing by my crib, and he reached around the door sill and called for Mom, that Sharon needed help. So frankly, what happened that made me be scared stiff, I have yet to know. But during my life, I had to, well, I guess the next major event was when Dad called me into the bathroom, and it was our little secret, and I was to soap him up, bathe, just his genitals in the sink. And I thought, and then he made a point to say that this was our secret. Don't tell mommy. This is our little secret. And that happened, I don't know, 2, 3 times, not a lot, but I felt confused. And I think I was 4, 5 years old, and secrets were kind of new to me, and in fact, I was recalling lately of when did I know that people could lie? I was playing out in the backyard with my brother and sister when they told me that people cannot tell the truth. And but the interesting thing is, everybody's different. Well, mom had me do flashcards with my brothers and sisters. 3 + 2 = 5. And my older brother and sister were just a year and 2 years older than me. And the beautiful thing about it, I paid attention to what I was doing there. Why just sit and listen to my brother and sister? And so I paid attention. And by the time I started first grade, I knew my sister's flashcards almost better than she did. So that's evidence to me that I became kind of, even at that young age, a lifelong learner. I paid attention to life. And what exactly started with my oldest sister, I don't exactly know, but we moved when I was 8.5 to a farm. And sometimes I kind of wondered if we moved to the farm because of the sexual addiction my dad had or not. But we did irrigate and grow crops, alfalfa and wheat and pinto beans at first. And we had to clear the land and irrigate it. And then I wound up milking cows and stacking hay and feeding chickens, And, well, yeah, a lot of responsibility. In fact, I got a scar on my chin from somebody rolling a barrel into my barrel at the schoolyard and cutting. And my brother threw a bottle of water towards me, and I just doubled over and stopped, and the bottle hit me and then cut my head. But that's all the trauma of growing up. But when dad was a carpenter, and when he got home from work, he took us up to the big canal ditch that fed our irrigation system in eastern Washington, and it was probably 4 feet deep, so it fed a lot of farms to water their crops. And it was almost daily, pretty much daily, that we did that. And Dad would take Donna kind of upstream from the rest of the family and do their little playing around and giggling and whatever. But one night I was
Donna. Who's Donna?
Donna's my oldest sister, and we shared a bedroom together. And she did have hearing problems and had a couple of operations on her ears. I never had any operations. I was always healthy, but one night I woke up with my dad practically on top of her, bare naked, in our bed. And I wanted to pinch his bottom so bad, because shame on you is what I wanted to say, get out of here or whatever. But I just rolled over and pretended that nothing had happened and that I didn't see anything. But Dad moved her into a bedroom by herself. But this whole period of going to the canal ditch and going swimming and kind of cleaning up after being in a dusty farm and whatever, the fields. Then I had to ignore kind of what was the attention she was getting, and I wasn't. I remember being teased as a teenager at the dinner table for I was always bigger than other people my size, my age, and my brother and dad started calling me Blue Elephant. Well, they teased me so bad one night, I decided I didn't want to eat if I had to put up with their bullying, kind of basically. They didn't mean anything by it, but that's what they say, But if it hurts, and I don't even want to eat if I have to um, keep hearing that kind of stuff, then I left the table. And he called me back, and he's sitting up in his chair, and he put his arm around my waist and said, "I come by my size legitimately with both my grandfathers were nearly 6 foot tall, and I was 5'8". And so it wasn't anything to be ashamed of. It was, the logical reason. Then he says, "Well, I'm trying to help you here in our family, so they out there, the rest of the world, can't hurt you." Well, that's kind of twisted logic. It should be a place of safety. And oh well, in fact, later, as I was getting ready to leave Seattle, I had Sunday dinner with my uncle at a local restaurant here, and I think I reminded him or told him of that story, and he said, "I remember a few weird things like that from seeing him and interacting with us kids." And so he gave me a big hug, and I said, "This is the real kind, isn't it?" And later that week, he died. My uncle died in an accident with his truck on his job. And that is such a gift to me that he validated some of the twisted logic or twisted parenting that my dad was doing. Well,
I think that's interesting, Sharon, because it happened to be my uncle who actually validated the same thing for me. But I had called him on the phone. It was in the very first stages of my therapy after I kind of had my little after God hit the reset button. That's what I like to say. After God hit the reset button on my life, and I started therapy, and I just called him one night and I said, "This is what I think, and this is how it felt to me, and was I right?" And at first he said, "No, Leslie, I don't remember any of that stuff. I don't really know what you're talking about." But I had to call him and ask because that was part of the therapy, and I had to see my therapist the next day. But I remember the next night, he'd actually called me back. And he said, "Les," and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, this is Uncle Joe." And I said, "I know. Hi, how are you?" And he said, "I just wanted to tell you that you were right." And I did know it. I didn't understand why it was happening. But yeah, you were right. And it happened not just now and again. He said, "This was your whole entire life." He said, "I don't know why. There was no logic to it, but you are absolutely 100% correct, Leslie. You were treated far different than anybody else, and I still to this day don't know why. I hope this helps." Because he knew that I needed that information for therapy, right? Because I had told him in our conversation why I called him and I asked him. And do you know I have the phone from him? I think I cried for hours. But there was this relief. There was this pressure. I don't know, just I don't know if it was the same way for you, but there was this unbelievable weight that came off of me, and I just remember crying. It was like confirming all of those things, that there's nothing wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
Did you have any like when he did that, when your uncle hugged you?
Well, I had at times with the therapy I was going through was mostly through the college classes I was doing, but there were times I went to church and I gave people hugs because I needed hugs.
Right.
Got hugs by offering them. Um, so, and I remember going to church one time and feeling like I was just so fragile, like an eggshell. And I thought, if anybody comes up behind me and says, boo, I'd crumble on the floor.
Right.
I was that just fragile. But in my teen years, especially I guess around 14, 15 years old, on the farm, as it was getting dark, Dad would sometimes call me off into the shadows and have me masturbate him some more. But I hundreds of times said, thank heavens he keeps his hands off me. And I decided that to be safe, that I needed to get focused, double down, get good grades, be obedient, and don't rock the boat. And that pretty much worked for me. That was I wanted to be invisible. And as we're talking to people today, how many times have you wanted to be invisible because of the trauma and ugliness and abuse that was going on around you? I know I had a roommate for a while that her dad was alcoholic, and if she had to call home and she knew it was past 5 o'clock, her dad got home pretty close to 5 o'clock, and if she needed some information, because she was in college classes then too, and I remember seeing her hand shaking and wondering, hoping like everything that her dad did not answer the phone, but he usually did. And then it was always a not exactly a game, but tug of war, more like, of getting the message she needed or getting the word to her mom or vice versa. And I've come to understand this last year how much trauma we've all been through. I had a man come on my loneliness to resilience program that had, I don't remember what the initial trauma was, but I believe it was a stepdad that treated him awful. And he went on to become quite the alcoholic and used a lot of drugs for pain. And he wound up falling onto a glass table and was in the hospital for months. But he taught me a lot about trauma and helped me really open up to the fact that high percent of us have been injured from, and we make valid judgments from a young, immature mindset. Is why is this going on? And yeah, like you said, it wasn't your fault. Somehow my parents, another part of being different is they seem to treat me a little differently. And up until just even 2-3 months ago, I was almost ready to ask my 2 younger sisters, what was the family rule about me that I seem to be ignorant of? And I finally have let it go. But different in that my spirit was gentle. I was always obedient. I wasn't mischief. I wasn't cutting corners and on the farm there's a lot of responsibility, and I've always been one that you can count on. Yet the only thing I can that makes any sense is I remember standing in church as a 4 or 5-year-old and I grew up in a church that believed in speaking in tongues and being their word of knowledge. And this one service, at the end of the service, there were two women that gave a word to the public, and I could tell one of them was true and one was false. A preschooler. And my mom explained to me later that that was discernment, that I had discernment. So maybe that's where this treating Sharon differently might have started, because that's pretty unusual. Oh, by the way, using the flashcards with my brother and sister, it helped me skip second grade. I was always glad I wasn't in that class behind me because they were more immature. But it turned out that when my sister had her own bedroom and whatever, and she started using a diary some, and I happened to pick up her diary one day and read 2-3 pages, and she said she knew she was pregnant, and she wondered how Dad would take the news, and wondered if it would be a boy or girl. And at that point, I didn't read anymore. I was kind of almost shaking even putting it down. But
Do you remember how old you were?
I was probably 16 years old.
How old was your sister?
Well, she would have been, she's 3 years older, so she would have been 19. I believe she was, well, I'm not sure she was still in high school or not. I don't think she was. But it turned out when my younger sister Barbara got married, they didn't go on any honeymoon, but they were walking through their house in the afternoon after the ceremony, and she mentions to me that I don't know all there is to know about Donna and Wenatchee. Well, Wenatchee, they had put her into a basement apartment of a lady's house there while she was pregnant. So I didn't see, her body to know she was pregnant because I just let it go. I didn't want to know about it. But it turned out that, her husband then said, leave it there. Don't say any more. Leave it there. And so she just dropped a seed of something for me to deal with later. Well, it was about 15 years later that I decided I was strong enough to handle the truth. And God reminded me of having read her diary. And, that's what's Donna in Wenatchee. So this gentle, resilient it was a good thing, I think, that God saved me from really knowing the truth. But as a student, I was always good. I always was diligent about doing my assignments, and I was pretty much B plus student, and at that age didn't feel too tarnished or broken. I do remember a few times thinking to myself, if you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. But I imagine a lot of kids do that. And I probably felt that way even up until maybe 40 years old. And so it's been very important to me to learn to love myself.
So I just want to go back for a minute. When your younger sister got married, she was going through her house, and your oldest sister lived in the basement?
No, Donna had been moved to Wenatchee, and the baby was born someplace there in Wenatchee, and Dad would go they tell me Dad went to Wenatchee at times to have dinner with her and whatever, and then come back home. And I wasn't living at home then. I think I'd left for college by that time. So it was all that weirdness going on of Dad and Donna being an item, basically.
So did your sister keep the baby?
I asked her later while I was in my master's program about that. I said she was trying to talk to me a lot about her Jehovah's Witness faith, and I said, I wish you'd respect the fact that I have a faith. What I'd like to know is you tell me more about your relationship with Dad. And she told me about standing at the counter in the courthouse, giving the baby up for adoption. And one of the questions they asked, do you know who the father is? And he was standing right there. And she wanted to yell, it's him, it's him, it's him. but you don't do that to your dad. So later, many years later, my brother did try to find this, half brother, and was never successful doing that. But yeah, it was a boy, and she gave it up for adoption. So I had never wanted, all my years, I never wanted Dad to walk me down the aisle. When I was about 38, 40, I did buy a wedding dress because it was my expect a miracle plan. I always wanted to be loved, but I rarely dated. Um, I basically thought it was a waste of time. I haven't met very many interesting men. Handsome maybe, but I kept my distance, and we've been, excuse me, preached to about all men want is sex, and in fact, when I was in 5th grade, our after school class did a outing at the roller skating rink. And the night before, Dad gave me a big lecture about somebody coming up that you don't know who they are, and they're going to put their hands on you and try to help you skate and all this. And be careful, and you never know what they're up to or what they want or where to go and all this, and scared me spitless, but I decided to go ahead and go because he left the choice up to me. And I put my roller skates on and had them on for about 10 minutes, but I was afraid of what might happen, And it took me a few years to realize he was the dirty old man that he was preaching to me about, making me scared. So all the more, suspicious of men every time I was around him. I be careful, all of this. So I have never married. I am 77. I went on to get a master's degree in behavioral science. And what I liked about behavioral science and some of the books that I've read about is that everybody has, I believe, a nugget of gold in them, a value and a greatness and a uniqueness that is beautiful and gorgeous, and they're a gift to the world. And I'm trying to be that for the world myself, but I also want to bring out that uniqueness and beauty in others. And so what saved me was both my faith and my self-help books that I read, and the college classes that I was in, because they helped me process that pain. Like, I remember one of my classmates was, I was talking to my dad. He was pretending to be my dad, and what would I have to say to him? And it was hard to do, and, kind of choked over my words, but little by little, I've come to realize that we're all doing the best we know how. We're all less than perfect, and somehow God loves us anyway. And I still have that wedding dress. I need to lose about 20 more pounds to get into that wedding dress. I may never get married, but I have a hope. One of the verses in the Bible I like a lot and live by is nothing is impossible with God. And He delights in us being happy. And in fact, I've just started trying to figure out how I can help people raise their desire for joy and happiness. Healing that trauma behind you is worth it. Knowing how God made you to be the beautiful, talented person with the values. Okay, well, what made a big difference for me in retirement is living every day by what matters to me. I decide whether my days are productive and worthwhile because I live by what my core values are.
Right.
And we don't talk much about values, but that was a big part of finding your spark, because that's what you're here to contribute. We're waiting for you to contribute your spark. That songwriting, that poem, that uh, art. It's all your talents are needed, and the more that trauma keeps you invisible and locked down, the longer we have to wait.
Right. I think that was so beautiful the way you said that, because it's true. Those experiences that you went through, I mean, and that many go through, they cover up the real aspects of who we are, and we're afraid to be ourselves. And when we do that, we end up not knowing who we truly are and really expressing ourselves. And a lot of people are saying, and I'm not denying that what we went through wasn't trauma, right? Because I had, sexual abuse as a young child with one of our neighbors, and then my oldest brother. But and my mom knew about it and did nothing. She did nothing about it. In fact, I didn't think she knew until I was 15. And when she blurted it out, she did it in a way that was almost shaming to me. And I remember we were driving down the highway, and it was in the 80s, and when they just started putting those things on the inside of the door, you could flip it so that child safety, right? And my little niece, we had those on the car because of my little niece. But I remember pulling at the door handle, and we were going down this freeway 60, 80 miles an hour, and I would have jumped out of that car, but the door would not open. Because I was first of all, I was embarrassed. Second of all, I thought, you knew all this time and you didn't do anything to help me. I mean, I can't even explain the feeling of what that was like. But I mean, it doesn't, there's nothing that takes that away, right? It's how you process through it that makes it better, right? It's that healing process that I think is really important for people to do. And it's, for me personally, it was my healing process. There's a lot of different ways we can go about it. But when I processed all of this stuff from my childhood like that, I said, what was mine? What part of that was my responsibility, right? And what part of it wasn't? And when I say responsibility, I mean looking at all of the aspects. I was a 4 or 5 year old child when this happened, with a neighbor. My responsibility was to have, maybe I didn't tell anybody. I should have spoke up about it. I don't know if I did or if I didn't, but I took responsibility saying maybe I didn't tell anybody. But then I also took responsibility and said I was just a little girl, and then all the rest of it that needed to be on that other person's, for the other person to deal with, they dealt with it. And I remember when I went to therapy and when I was 40, I wrote letters to these people, and I actually looked them up in the phone book and sent them. And people that had passed away, sent it to the mortuary. I wrote their names on it and I said, in care of, right, the mortuary, but their names were right there. Sometimes I think, oh my gosh, what are those morticians thinking? I wonder if any of them read them, because a lot of them went to like the same freaking place, right? But yeah, I think that helped me. What helped you with yours, with your healing?
Well, the self-help books were a big one of the books that I read actually twice was called Liberating Greatness. And the title kind of sounded a little preposterous, but his story was amazing, because in grade school they considered him a having mental challenges and maybe special ed classes. And I don't remember whether he was dyslexic or what exactly. He school was a real challenge, and yet he went on to high school and graduated. I don't remember if he had honors or not. He's now passed away, but he became a patent attorney. Well, that doesn't take, I mean, that's more than a, dumbbell. It takes a
Right.
lot of determination. And later he went on to, he did get into alcoholism, and it didn't last too long. He figured out that he didn't want to be that kind of man, that it only lasted 2-3 years. But he did go through AA, and he appreciated how much they gave to others to help them heal. And he developed some kind of pathways to greatness, or something that groups of people would go and preach or teach on becoming a better you. That to be a lifelong learner was a good thing, and to be the best that you can be was effort well spent. His first wife died by standing on a corner of a downtown city and being hit by a bus. So his second wife has remained taking care of his foundation, and has been, in fact, she's a coach, I think, up in Connecticut or Massachusetts, and her name is Sharon. In fact, also Williamson, his name was Williamson. For his first name I forget. But what helped me, I guess, because I've been pretty independent, maybe more independent than I needed to be, but feeling okay. So how I went from feeling invisible to becoming bolder, and I got, about the time I retired, a profile, because I like profiles because they help me understand myself. And this profile came a week or two after I'd retired, and it said I was an influencer. This is wrong. This is one profile that is not right. They've got this piece wrong. That is not me. How come you're telling me? And I thought, well, maybe not everything's perfect. And so every now and then, I guess I happen, because I left it on the dining table, and a couple times I read it, and I thought, well, maybe. I think you're wrong. But somebody gave me a call from New York City about being on a podcast, and they said, I guess they saw something on my Facebook, or I don't even know if I was on LinkedIn or not, but they thought I had something to say and that I would be good as a guest. So I had to pay to be a guest. Afterwards, I hadn't been broadcast more than 3-4 hours, and they called me back and said that I had energy and that I was good to listen to and all this. And would you like to do your own podcast? And so they negotiated with me to host my podcast on Spreaker platform, and I did 26, I think, programs, audio only, on Spreaker. And so I did like you. I'm interviewing guests and getting their story. I loved, because I'm quite the possibility thinker. The more diverse their experiences were, the better. You're thinking outside the box. You're not, in a locked in. You're
Right.
doing something creative, and so I enjoyed that. In fact, one of my first guests was Joyce Major, that she had traveled all over the world, being a community service volunteer, and she wound up feeding baby lions, helping out at a baboon sanctuary, riding elephants, and teaching Chinese kids English. And she was 54. So but she knew her heart wanted to be expanded, and she spent a year doing that. Anyway, so I went on from doing that audio only to then doing an audio and video. And one of the last people I wanted to interview was somebody with courage, and I must have asked 8 or 10 people who could I have come on my program as to talk about courage. I was surprised at how many people I had to ask. They didn't know anybody with courage. But I finally found Robert Nicholson, and I had lunch with him just before Thanksgiving. He's now, I think, 91. Fascinating man, but he's been a preacher and a tour guide on the railroad and a umpire at soccer games, and it just goes on and on. But what a delight when he, like me, didn't have any boundaries on where life could take him. And I have since become Queen of Courage myself on Instagram, and I try to encourage people to be courageous at least once a week, and face life with a lot of faith and gumption, I think is a good word for it, or grit, that you face life with determination. So
I think that's wonderful. That's just so beautiful. Thank you. So, after you left home and everything, did your mother ever talk about what happened?
not really. She seemed to she didn't acknowledge it. Well, there was a couple of times that she spent 3-4 days walking our farm, and I don't know if she came in at night or not, but I imagine it was pretty close to maybe a mental breakdown or a nervous breakdown. I don't know. It was never talked about either. But there was early one morning, she got us all out of bed at about 5:30 in the morning and had us go outside, and we had to vote on whether Dad should leave or stay. And I don't remember that she said much, but situations had happened, she said, and it was time to do something about it. So that was her effort to confront the misbehavior, let's put it that way.
How old were you?
And I was probably 15 or 16. And I remember standing outside, chilly and cold, and wondering why we were making such a heavy decision. And I also felt like, how do you vote against your dad? You know, after all, he was a moneymaker. She wasn't working, or if she was, it was just part-time at the grocery store up the street. So a heavy choice. And I guess I probably would, if I had it to do over again, I would stand up to both of them. But she played dummy is not the right word. Innocent, I guess, would be maybe another word. But
Do you think that I think that back? I think with what might have been happening back in those times, people just brushed things under the rug and pretended they didn't happen because they didn't really know how to deal with it because they felt stuck. And I know that is back in the day, or in that generation, and because women really probably around that time, women didn't really work. They really didn't have a lot of rights. And you can see with your mother with 5 kids, I mean, what does she do? I mean, that to me would be incredibly intimidating. I mean, what do you do? But the courage that it took for that woman to pull on you outside and ask, right? That had to have taken a lot. And she must have been freaking ripped up inside, right? She had to have been. I mean, there's no other explanation. But also, I think it took a lot of courage for her to do that. I do. I do. But, and taking, and I know that why I say this is because I know that there's got to be a lot of people right now that will listen to this podcast. They feel like they're stuck or they're backed into a corner where they really don't have the option. Maybe it's a stay-at-home mom. Maybe it's a husband. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's apparently, men and women, are perpetrators. So I'm not gender specific, but sometimes we can feel like we're stuck in these situations that we just don't know how to get out. There's no option, right? There's no option. So what would you say? I mean, there are options, but again, imagine all you know is this is how it is. You don't know what you don't know. You can't blame somebody for not knowing what they don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I listened to a video just a couple days ago as part of some therapy I'm going through now, and it was on YouTube. It was by Carl Jung, Jung, and the title was something about 5 uh, ways know you're dealing with a manipulator. And I really intend to go back and listen to it again because I think there's somebody in my family still that is a manipulator. But the whole um, it kind of resembled close to what a narcissist is, but I kind of want to help myself understand the difference. But all the cowering down and trying to help somebody else be happy or being under their control was what I was really getting out of it. And I thought, thank heavens, I've never been in a situation where I felt like I was being controlled. That certainly would have been a big difference in my life. But I was always pretty independent. Um, I've always stood on my own 2 feet. I've always valued myself as far as being able to stand on my own 2 feet. Um, I've invested in my college classes because I knew I was worth it. And bringing out the best in people is such a delight, and why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I've created that process of defining my spark or my essence is something I want everybody to know, to how they are unique and different and the value they bring to this world. You're alive and you're here to contribute from the best gold or diamond that's inside of you. And I haven't shared I I was taught it as being an essence statement, but I've renamed it to be spark or inner spark, or kind of feels like your GPS or your DNA. And I feel like it also brings a little bit of heaven on earth because it feels so perfect for you. Here's mine. And when I shared it with my class, feeling like I was sharing my soul was just an amazing feeling. I am precious jewel of wisdom. I am colorful collaborator, motivator, and learner. I am tranquil, authentic, and pure inspirer. I light fires, and I'm here to help light yours. The treasure is inside of you. It's right there. And that's where your spark comes from. And I help you unwrap it. Discover your spark, rekindle your joy is my course.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful. It really resonates with my stuff too. It's like life made easier, living from the inside out. When you look in here, all and not out here, gets so much easier, right? So many of us, for so long, and so many still, I think 85% of people really are looking out there. And this is why we have the drug abuse, why we have alcoholism, why we have all of this, especially narcissism. I don't get angry. People say, "Oh, avoid narcissists, avoid narcissists." You know what? I think they deserve a lot of empathy because those people have got to be hurting. They've got to be hurting so much that they can't control in here. This has gone absolutely nuts, and they're trying to control what's uncontrollable, and they're trying to be perfect. But even as perfect as they are, and as perfect as they become, because the guy that I dated jogged up, he exercised, he was fit, he did everything right, right? He was good looking and dressed well and spoke the way he was supposed to speak, but he just didn't like himself because no matter what he did, something out there found fault in it, right? And it made him angry in here. And if he could have just been okay in here, everything out there would have gotten so much better. And I mean, I don't know what ever happened to him. I mean, I think he's dating somebody and, or they're living together, or whatever. But I mean, I just wish him the best. But he's the only person I dated um, after my divorce in 2007. We dated from like 2010 to 2014. No, 2000, yeah, 2010 to about 2014. But I'll tell you what, it helped me become who I am because I needed that. I needed that drastic change, right? And it rapidly helped me define myself. It helped me really understand who I was. And when I walked away, and I walked away several times, and they kind of just try to bring you back, but they just want to feel loved. Narcissistic people just want to feel loved and be accepted. That's it. And so I really felt that. I mean, I look back on it now and I think I was really pissed off and angry. It broke my heart then. Now I look back and I think that he must have just been miserable, right? Because he had everything he could have. He was he had so much going for him, but he was still so angry. And
Well,
it was sad.
I picked up a book here recently. I didn't read the whole thing at all, but it was called Outlive, and it's by a doctor that he did all the right things. His book was about living longer and living the best life and all the nutrition and all the things he knew about being a medical doctor and going to the gym and having that perfect sculpted body. But the last chapter was on emotions. And I had seen a couple people on LinkedIn comment about what an amazing chapter that last chapter was. And he said he finally admitted 2-3 pages into the last chapter that all that previous expertise as a doctor was because of his fear of longevity, of not living long, fear of not being able to complete his life. And yet he was so obsessed with well, in fact, one of his wife had been expecting, and she started hemorrhaging in her 8th month, and he was out of town speaking someplace in New York or Connecticut or something like that. And so while she was in the ambulance going to the hospital, she calls him, and his only response was, "Let me talk to the doctor when you get there." And no empathy at all. No, I hope you're doing well. I hope I'm sorry this has happened. And he still regrets his response because he had no connection to his feelings. And he had to go through therapy, go out to a location for, I don't know, 2-3 weeks or something to go through therapy. And of course, he always felt like he was better than everybody else in the class until his fellow friends insisted he go a second time. And face himself, be honest with yourself, to acknowledge that you don't know it all and you're a needy, perfect man. And so one of the things he did to transform his behavior was to park a block or so from home and stop and think about how he wanted to be when he got in the family door, and get his mind adjusted and his empathy in place and his energy correct, to pick up his 3-year-old daughter. And when daddy's home, she loved going to the car, daddy's home, and to actually hug his children and be home when he was home. The author is Peter Attia, and that I love that chapter because it's such an honest, authentic account of him and his transformation. No matter how, I don't know whether he called himself a narcissist or not before, but to make that change and value his family and value others as much as he valued himself was pretty touching.
In his defense, I'm going to say this. He went to medical school and he's in a profession where he has to think logically and not emotionally, right? Because I think doctors get in positions where they have to separate the emotions from the profession. And I think that what he learned was so admirable because he must have learned how to separate work and family, right? There has to be like that balance. And um, that's brilliant to me. I think that's brilliant that he was able to figure that out. And but I can see why he would have done what he did, right? He was like, that was a medical thing. He was reacting as if he would have in any other medical situation, and that's all he could do, right? But he realized later, but that was my wife. It was different. But I I mean, sometimes we act, but we have to act sometimes we act and then we feel later, right? You have to be, I don't know. I don't know really how to explain it, but I think that he did. I think he was brilliant. I think that was brilliant of him. So, I just have one, just to wrap this up. How did everything end with your family? I mean, your sisters, your siblings, did any of you ever get together and talk about these things, or did your parents pass and you never went to their funeral? I mean, how did you? And one of the things I want to say before you end with that, that's how I want this to end. But one of the things that now I just kind of lost what I was thinking. Anyway, I think it's important for people to know how. Oh, here's what I was gonna say. When I was going through all this stuff, right? As it started coming, as things started brewing, I think of it. I did this trash compactor thing where I would smash my feelings down, right? I would smash them down, and I think that my freaking meltdown came one day when I opened up to throw more in, and it exploded, right? When God hit that reset button. One of the things I did is I went out and bought almost every freaking self-help book there was on the shelf. And I would read them and I would read them and I would read them. And what I found is right after my healing process and I graduated, when I got to the point where when I was like a 20-year-old, when I was 40, I actually went back to college and got my double degree in sociology and psychology. And after I graduated from college, I think I was like 43, right around 43, 44. But I was a first-time college and high school graduate in my family. But when I moved to Scottsdale, Arizona, because I wanted to get my master's degree, and then when I was there, I realized I was just chasing. I was chasing my own villain, right? I was chasing after my own villain. The thing that was trying to eat me up, I was chasing it. So I didn't go to college. I stayed in Scottsdale. And I actually got a job, and I spent a year as a flight attendant. And I did something that was fun for me, right? Instead of I was chasing my demons. That's what I think. I was chasing my demons. But I remember when I moved from there, and I had boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of books. I mean, I used to have books everywhere. I'd always read. I remember taking them, and I probably took 3 or 4 trips to the library, and I donated every single help book, almost every single one of them, because I thought, Leslie, all you're doing is you're chasing your demons, and you just keep this stuff spiraling inside of you. That's what I realized with me, is that I was, as I kept looking outside of me through all these self-help books for the answers that I eventually found in here. And a lot of it came after I moved back here. But I don't read self-help books anymore. I'll look at the Bible. I look at inspirational things. I look at things that I can grow from. But not one of them is self-help from out there. Self-help comes from in here now. None of that helped me. I probably spent thousands of dollars on books, right? But I remember just packing them all up and getting rid of them. And that was, I swear that was a liberating day. That was a liberating day. I haven't read a self-help book since. Now, there are some books that people might think of as a self-help book, like a meditation book or a book on but that to me is learning something, right? What do I think of? There's certain people that have certain, I think of, who's a good self-help person? Dispenza. Dispenza does a lot of healing stuff, right? Joe Dispenza. But I would read his books only because it's not a self-help book. It's a teach you something book. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, it could be looked at, and that's the only person I can think of right now that would be an example. But it's more of an education. It's like learn more about this so you can know more about this.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
What a gift he is. Yeah.
He's amazing. He's quite amazing. Yeah, he's quite amazing. So, how did it all end?
Well, my mom died first. She had, I guess, had gone through some cancer treatment, but cancer didn't seem to be all that significant. But I guess she was going up and getting treatments in when actually for 4 or 6 weeks. But she died in the hospital from having gone to get some iron in her blood. She was anemic. And she also had diabetes, but I guess she really didn't treat the diabetes much, so that probably didn't help. But she had gone in once or twice before, and I think she's gotten a big iron shot in her bottom, to get a jump start something. But yeah, her eyelids had gotten so translucent when your iron, when it gets down to like 11 or 7 or something, you die from not having enough iron in your body. And she had just did that breathing exercise where you got to make the ball bounce up and help clear your lungs, I guess, and had expended a lot of energy doing that. And she just passed away after that exercise. And so then dad eventually remarried to a friend that was also a farmer, and her husband had died on the hospital operating table. I think it had something to do with the oxygen. So that was a surprise for his wife. And then they were Christians also, and Dad started dating her and then asked her to marry him. And they were together, I think, about 3 years before he developed quite a he had a heart surgery in Spokane, and I don't remember what that was about because I was not living in the state at the time. I was probably in Tampa or Dallas. But Dad, what my sister took care of him before he passed away, and I remember the one time I confronted him in trying to get some healing was I was towards the end of my master's degree in behavioral science, and it was a Thanksgiving weekend, and I was determined I was going to say something to him, and so I caught him out by my car before I left, and I said, well, why are we not close? You know, I said, is it because he was a carpenter, and by that time I was working in data processing? Is it because I make more money than you? Is it because I went to college and you didn't? Is it because I don't know? I named off 4 or 5 things, and he just kept saying no. He had a way of doing this with his hands. No, I never did answer. I don't know if it was before or after that he had come over to Seattle and went to my church, and I wanted to introduce him at least to the pastors that I was most working with at the time, and I couldn't find him. Where'd Dad go? And he had gone outside the building. He didn't have good enough clothes to be in that crowd, and yes, it was kind of a upper class audience, and so he had scooted out as quick as possible, probably trying to look invisible, and it really kind of irked me that his self-esteem was so low, or well, he judged himself. Comparison is such an evil thing because it makes us feel bad about ourselves, and apparently that was what he was doing. So that's the only really confrontation, and then a kind of a disappointment that I couldn't have him meet my pastors. But there was both my older brother and sister passed away from accidents. So I'm now the oldest of 3. And my next younger sister, I have reason to believe she was traumatized too. I asked her about it once, and she told me a story that didn't sound good at all, but I didn't pursue it more, and I wished I had. But I actually texted to her something here about a year or 2 ago as to whether there was more to her story, and she just retorted with, "I thought you got over that a long time ago." So she didn't answer my question, and she's had rheumatoid arthritis for decades, on disability, and is lots of pain, and she will not for all the self-help I've gone through and how I've lived on my own. You know, she wound up having 5 kids, and her life was full of drama, but you know, she's doing the best she knows how, so I have to leave her and love her in where she's at. But I still pray for her every morning and every night for God to bless her with healing virtue, healing energy.
And what about the youngest?
I think there's no reason for me to believe that she was affected at all. Her and I are best friends, and I've never seen anything significant that makes me think that she's anything but a wholehearted, loving lady.
So she wasn't affected by it, and have you two ever talked about it?
I don't know that we have. I haven't had reason to talk to her about it, but we, when it comes to Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, middle child, one with rheumatoid arthritis, she's always late, and she still brings a fruit salad every year, or her Boston baked beans that she fixes to our reunion functions every couple years.
So there's the three of you girls left, and you never married. Do you think it affected your relationships with men or any of that?
I'm still a virgin.
At 77 years old. Your second sister that's still alive, did she ever get married?
Both of my younger sisters have gotten married. My oldest sister did get married, and she married somebody that had just had a fiance die in an accident, and 4 or 5 months before they married, and he was not emotionally available at all. He's still alive, but when she died, it really traumatized her kids because it's sudden gone. And I think it's a blessing to have a quick death because you don't have to suffer. But it sure shakes up the kids because she was the rock of the family, you know.
So your older sister went off to she went on in life and she was able to get married and have children.
Mm-hmm.
So all of your siblings went on to get married and have children, and nobody really spoke about it. Do you think that there was any, like, they talk about generational things that just carry through. Do you think that your stuff with your family stopped with your dad?
Seems like I think there's been some careful assessment maybe that is not continuing, but with especially the 5 kids in Barbara's family, but I don't know anything for sure about that. Yeah, that's worth keeping your eyes open for. Yeah.
Sharon, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story and letting people know that this happens and people aren't alone, and you just keep all you can do is really grow and you were such a leader and such an example of make sure you take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You have to know who you are and do things for you, about you, and because of you, because this is your life. And that's what I think that you did. You didn't fall prey to victimhood. You took the bull by the horns and you went forward. And yeah, I just want to say thank you. I did the same thing. It's not an easy path to do. It's not a path that everybody just welcomes you. You don't end up with social skills that makes you the most popular or the most jovial, but it does make you the most compassionate, and you are the one that people come to when they need stuff. But but you have to be that way because you build we build our stuff within ourselves that makes it so that we don't ask for help. We just move those mountains ourselves, right? So part of that path, I think that when you take this road, which I think is the way everybody should go, is that you learn how to move your own mountains, and that you're able to take care of yourself. You don't necessarily and that you can be there for other people, because not everybody's that strong. But that strength comes because you've always taken care of yourself, right? I think that's heroic.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people are stuck because what will other people think? I don't care what other people think. You know, how do I think about myself? You know, when you know that you're doing the best you can. Okay, so with promiscuous sexual things, they say either people become more promiscuous or they become fat Well, I became fat because that means I wasn't attractive and people would stay away from me. My sister, her husband spent 22 years or something in the military, so she was around men and she was promiscuous to some degree. How much? And I think she took money for some of it, but like I say, we're all doing the best we know how and getting love and attention. So when I retired, I was 245 pounds, and I'm now down to 193. Um, I think I need to be about 170, 75 to get into that wedding dress. So I still have a goal, ways to go.
Well, I think that you should get on some of these dating sites, and I'm surprised you haven't met anybody at church. Get out there.
Yeah, yeah. I have one friend that's always asking me or suggesting I change churches or go to single Christian events, and it's not that important to me. I'm plenty busy trying to help light a spark in everybody.
It's not that important to you, but you still have that dress? That's not right. I think you should just maybe noodle on that one for a little bit longer, because I think it's a little more important to you than you might be admitting. I think there's a little bit more behind of, oh God, but Leslie, it's been 77 years and there's so much fear and there's so much that I've just done, and I'm just not even sure. And I think that you should noodle on that one because you are a very, very beautiful person, right? And you want to feel that. And I think that you should experience that in your life. And so I'm with your friends. And if I lived close to you, I'd probably come over and take you to those events myself. I'd drag you into the car because you deserve it. You just,
Last week I did go to the line dancing class for the first time. We could not dance growing up, and I didn't know whether I had enough rhythm for dancing, but the songs they were playing had a good amount of rhythm to it. There's only one man there, and I had reason to believe he might have been there with his wife. I don't know, but I need more desire and joy and
yes, you do.
fun. Yeah.
When you go through the things that we do through, and we're so hyper independent, we've done all this stuff, we always feel like we have to keep doing and doing for other people. Sharon, you retired. It's time to start living your life for you. It's time to start doing things for you. I think line dance is great. Let me tell you what, that'll burn some calories off you. When I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona for that year, I used to go line dancing all the time, and I used to have a great time. Great time. And it'll burn some calories. But it's like I loved country western dancing. That was really fun. Like the two-step and yeah, the cowboy cha-cha. Yeah, those things are fun. You're gonna like it. I can just see you out there doing the electric slide. Have fun with that dancing. I'm so grateful that we finally got this recorded and done, and I'm glad to see you smile. I'm glad to see you smile. I think that you're a phenomenal individual, and you definitely have so much value to add to the world. But you also need to remember, do some things for you. It's about you now. Maybe you should take one of those single cruises. Have you ever been on a
Yeah.
cruise?
I was in September, and it was kind of a disappointment, but there was a guy in my class that sat by me 3 or 4 times, and I never did know whether he was single or not, but I think he picked up on my vibe and liked my company. But I I have considered, in fact, after the cruise, one of the pictures, one night is a formal night, and so the dress I took for a formal night was a royal purple, and it looks really good on me. And this gentleman in Baltimore, who I knew when I was a teenager, and I knew him and his wife before they were married, and he practically asked me for a date online because I looked so good in that dress. and uh, and he said I should be in the Miss America pageant. Well,
Wow.
I actually looked into it, and there's 2 or 3 that are for the older women, and there's a senior Miss America, and I don't know the different names for them. There's 2 pageants, but then there's a super senior pageant, and since I'm over 75, I'd qualify for super senior. I went it hands down right.
You need to get out there on that dance floor a couple times a week. I used to go, like, I think it was Tuesdays and Thursdays I used to go, but I knew the girl that taught the classes, so she would just go from place to place, right? And just twice a week we'd go. And it was like a meetup group that I got involved in when I went there, but I met some really, really nice women. Do meetup groups too, but I just met some really nice women. I lived down there, and we used to go and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. We used to do like this river cruise thing during the day, and we used to just go up and drink our way back. And but the biggest thing we did is we just danced, and I think that there's so much power in music. I think it had um, a lot to do with my healing because of the music, and it was so upbeat. But man, it got hotter than hell. But I'll tell you what, one of the most beautiful sights I've ever really seen is when the desert blooms. When the desert blooms, it is so, so beautiful, and it's almost mirrors when the ocean blooms, right? You kind of the cacti look a little bit like the same things that grow in the water, and in some areas, and if you really think about it, they reflect, right? Because we have oh, what are they called in the ocean? I want to say stalagmite, but they flower, right? And so does the desert. To me, it was just like it was beautiful for me to be able to find that comparison, that familiarity of dry and I don't know. Anyway, that was my whole thing. Well, I think you should do it, and I think you should get on those cruise ships. I think you should get on some meetup.com groups, and I think you should just set your sights on getting married and put your sails up, my friend. Let whatever catches your sail catch your sail.
Yeah,
You,
it will come soon. A couple times I've had a sense of a man's head, right about here, and around Christmas time. In fact, a couple times I had a strong sense that he was on his way. So
stop avoiding him. Stop avoiding the fact that he's God's saying it. Here he is. If you want him, you got to just feel like he's there, right? And it's hard. I'm going to tell you, Sharon, I haven't dated really since 2014, and I've done a lot of work to get to heal. Had to heal a lot of really, really serious stuff. And it's hard to let people back into your life, whether it's friends or and especially like a partner you're going to share your life with. It's tough to make those decisions, right? It's really tough. But God didn't put us here to be alone. And they keep reminding me that, Leslie, you're not meant to be alone. And you got to you just have to open your heart to whatever God
well,
has to
and
offer.
I'm headed for 100, so I've got some years left.
Oh, Sharon. Oh my gosh, you might have to just join a convent then. We'll talk again soon. Take care.